Chapter 1. The Call of the Unknown. Deep beneath the waves of the vast ocean lay the majestic kingdom of Atlantica, ruled by King Triton, the powerful yet protective ruler of the seas. Among his 7 daughters, Ariel stood out, not just because of her radiant beauty, but because of her insatiable curiosity about the world beyond their underwater realm. While her sisters found joy in singing and attending courtly events, Ariel's heart yearned for adventure and knowledge about the human world, a place she had only glimpsed from afar. Ariel's secret sanctuary was a hidden cave filled with treasures from the human world. She had spent years collecting objects that had fallen from ships, forks, spoons, trinkets, and other items whose purpose she could only guess. To Ariel, these items were not just things. They were pieces of a puzzle, hints about a world she longed to understand. Her closest companion, the witty and loyal flounder named Flounder, often accompanied her on these treasure hunts, although he was far less enthusiastic about the dangers they encountered. One fateful day, Ariel's curiosity led her to the surface of the ocean, a place her father had forbidden her to go. The world above was dazzling, a vast expanse of blue sky and warm sunlight that danced on the waves. As Ariel swam closer to the surface, she spotted a grand ship sailing nearby. On board, humans were celebrating, music filling the air, and among them stood a young man who caught Ariel's eye. He was tall and handsome, with dark hair and a warm, infectious smile. Ariel's heart raced as she watched him, Prince Eric, though she did not know his name yet. For the first time in her life, Ariel felt something she could not explain, a pull toward this stranger that went beyond mere curiosity. As she lingered near the ship, a sudden storm brewed, its ferocious winds and towering waves threatening to tear the vessel apart. Ariel watched in horror as the ship was struck by lightning and began to sink. Without hesitation, she dove into the churning waters, her powerful tail propelling her toward the wreckage. Amidst the chaos, she found the young prince unconscious, his body sinking into the depths. Ariel wrapped her arms around him and swam to the surface, her heart pounding with fear and determination. Reaching the shore, Ariel gently laid Eric on the sand, her crimson hair cascading around them like a fiery halo. She sang softly to him, her voice carrying the magic of her emotions. As Eric stirred and opened his eyes briefly, Ariel quickly slipped away, fearful of being discovered. From the shadows, she watched as humans from a nearby village found Eric and carried him to safety. Ariel's heart ached as she realized that she could never truly be a part of his world. Returning to Atlantica, Ariel could not shake the memory of Eric's face or the feelings he had stirred within her. She became distant and distracted, spending more time in her secret grotto and less time with her family. Her sisters noticed her change, and even Flounder couldn't cheer her up. King Triton, unaware of what had happened, grew concerned about his youngest daughter's behavior. Ariel, however, was consumed by a new dream, a dream to bridge the gap between her world and Eric's, no matter the cost. The call of the unknown had awakened something deep within her, and she could not ignore it. Chapter 2. A forbidden dream. Ariel's heart was no longer her own. It belonged to a world she could never touch. Days turned into weeks, and her thoughts of Prince Eric only deepened. She replayed every moment she had spent watching him, every detail of his face, and the way he had smiled aboard the ship. Her longing for the human world grew stronger, consuming her every waking thought. In her secret grotto, Ariel examined her collection of human treasures with new purpose. Holding a delicate fork, she imagined what it might feel like to sit at a grand feast in a human castle. As she twirled it in her fingers, Flounder swam up beside her, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Ariel, you've been quiet lately," Flounder said hesitantly. "You're not thinking about going to the surface again, are you? You know your dad would—" "Flounder," Ariel interrupted, her voice filled with both frustration and longing. "You don't understand. It's not just the surface. It's everything up there. The people, their lives. I want to be part of it. I want to know what it's like to walk, to dance, to be with him." Flounder frowned but stayed silent. He knew better than to argue with Ariel when her mind was set. That evening, Ariel's unusual behavior did not go unnoticed. King Triton, ever watchful of his daughters, summoned Sebastian, the royal court composer and an unwilling chaperone for Ariel. Sebastian, a loyal but often anxious crab, was tasked with keeping an eye on her. "Ariel's been acting strange," Triton said, pacing in his throne room. "She's distracted, distant. I need you to find out what's going on and report back to me." Sebastian nodded reluctantly. "Of course, Your Majesty. I'll see to it." The next day, Sebastian trailed Ariel as she swam to her grotto. He hid behind a coral reef, his eyes widening as he listened to her speak aloud to Flounder about Eric and her dreams of the human world. When Ariel began singing about her desire to be where the people are, Sebastian could no longer contain his shock. "This is madness," Sebastian exclaimed, stepping out from his hiding place. "Ariel, you can't be serious. Humans are dangerous. They destroy everything they touch. Your father would never allow this." Ariel turned to face him, her expression defiant. "You don't understand, Sebastian. They're not all bad. Eric isn't bad. He's kind, brave, and he's human," Sebastian interrupted, his voice rising in exasperation. "Ariel, you don't belong in their world. You belong here, in the sea." But Ariel shook her head. "I've spent my whole life here, Sebastian, and I love it. But I feel like there's something missing, something I can only find up there. I can't explain it, but I know it's where I'm meant to be." Sebastian sighed, realizing that no amount of reasoning would change her mind. He knew he had to tell King Triton, but part of him couldn't bring himself to betray Ariel's trust. Unbeknownst to all of them, however, someone else had been watching. In the dark corners of the ocean, the sea witch Ursula observed Ariel's every move through her enchanted crystal ball. Ursula, banished from Atlantica years ago for her treachery, saw an opportunity in Ariel's longing. A wicked grin spread across her face as she plotted to use the young princess's desires to her advantage. "Poor, unfortunate soul," Ursula murmured to herself. "She'll come crawling to me soon enough, and when she does, I'll finally have the leverage I need to take Triton's throne." Meanwhile, Ariel's internal conflict grew stronger. Her desire to be with Eric and to walk among humans clashed with her loyalty to her father and her kingdom. She felt trapped between two worlds, unable to fully belong to either. Late one night, unable to sleep, Ariel swam to the surface again. She gazed at the distant shoreline where Eric's castle stood, its lights twinkling like stars. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered into the night, "I'll find a way. Somehow, I'll find a way to be part of your world." As the waves lapped gently around her, Ariel made a decision that would change her life forever. She would not give up on her dream, no matter the cost. Chapter 3. The Deal with the Sea Witch. As Ariel's longing grew unbearable, she found herself teetering on the edge of desperation. The dream of being part of the human world consumed her every thought, and her heart ached at the impossibility of her situation. One night, as she sat alone in her grotto, running her fingers over a human music box, she heard a voice, a deep, silky, and eerily inviting voice that seemed to echo from the shadows. "Poor little mermaid," the voice cooed, sending a chill down Ariel's spine. So full of dreams, yet so powerless to make them come true. Ariel spun around, her wide eyes scanning the darkness. From the shadows emerged two sinister-looking eels, Flotsam and Jetsam, their glowing yellow eyes fixated on her. Who are you?" Ariel asked, her voice trembling. "We're friends, dear," one of the eels hissed, "and we know someone who can help you." Ariel hesitated, sensing danger but also tempted by the possibility of a solution. "Help me? With what?" "With your dream," the other eel replied smoothly. "To walk among the humans, to be part of their world. Our mistress can make it happen." Ariel's heart leaped at the prospect. "Who's your mistress?" Flotsam and Jetsam exchanged knowing looks before answering in unison. "Ursula." The name struck a chord of fear in Ariel. She had heard tales of the Sea Witch, a powerful, cunning sorceress who had been banished from Atlantica for her dark deeds. But the temptation was too strong. Ariel's desperation to be with Eric outweighed her fear. "Take me to her," Ariel said, her voice firm despite the unease gnawing at her. Flotsam and Jetsam led Ariel through dark, twisting caverns at the ocean's floor, their glowing eyes lighting the way. The path was treacherous, littered with jagged rocks and the eerie remains of long-forgotten shipwrecks. Ariel's heart pounded as they approached a massive, grotesque lair surrounded by what looked like petrified merfolk, their faces frozen in expressions of agony. Inside, Ursula awaited her. The Sea Witch was a towering figure, her presence both captivating and menacing. Her voluptuous form was draped in black and purple, her tentacles writhing with anticipation. A sly smile spread across her face as she welcomed Ariel. "Ah, the youngest daughter of King Triton," Ursula said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "What an unexpected pleasure." Ariel swallowed hard, but stood her ground. "I've heard you can help me." "Indeed I can," Ursula purred, circling Ariel like a predator, sizing up its prey. "You wish to become human, don't you? To walk on land, to be with your prince?" Ariel nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes." Ursula clapped her hands together, her grin widening. "Well, aren't you a determined little thing? But magic, my dear, always comes at a price." "What kind of price?" Ariel asked cautiously. Ursula leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your voice." Ariel gasped, her hands instinctively going to her throat. "My voice?" "That beautiful, enchanting voice of yours," Ursula explained. "You won't need it on land. After all, the prince will fall in love with you for your looks, won't he? Not your words." Ariel hesitated, doubt creeping into her mind. "And if he doesn't?" "Ah, there's the catch," Ursula said, her tone turning sinister. "If the prince doesn't give you true love's kiss within 3 days, you'll belong to me. Forever." Ariel's heart raced. The stakes were unimaginably high, but the thought of living the rest of her life without even trying was unbearable. "I'll do it," Ariel said, her voice steady despite her fear. Ursula cackled with delight. "Excellent." Let's seal the deal, shall we? With a wave of her hands, Ursula summoned a glowing contract written in golden ink. Ariel barely skimmed the terms before signing it with a trembling hand. The moment the contract was signed, Ursula's magic took hold. She chanted an incantation, her tentacles swirling around Ariel as a glowing orb of light emerged from her throat. Her voice. The orb floated into Ursula's hand, and with a triumphant laugh, she placed it into a shell necklace around her neck. As the spell reached its climax, Ariel felt her tail begin to split and transform. Pain coursed through her body as her fins gave way to legs, but she gritted her teeth and endured it. Within moments, she was no longer a mermaid, but a human. Disoriented and unable to speak, Ariel found herself washed up on the shore near Eric's castle. She lay there, gasping for breath, her heart pounding with both fear and excitement. When she opened her eyes, she saw a familiar figure standing over her, Prince Eric. "Miss, are you all right?" Eric asked, his voice full of concern as he knelt beside her. Ariel looked up at him, unable to answer, but overjoyed to be near him. She had taken the first step toward her dream, but the clock was ticking, and the real challenge was only beginning. Chapter 4. A Silent Beginning. Ariel's eyes fluttered open as the golden sunlight warmed her skin. The sound of waves lapping at the shore filled her ears, but it was the sight of Prince Eric kneeling beside her that made her heart leap. He was even more handsome up close, his kind eyes searching hers with genuine concern. "Are you hurt?" Eric asked, his voice gentle. Ariel opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Panic set in as she touched her throat, realizing the gravity of what she had given up. Her voice, the one thing that could connect her to him, was gone. Eric frowned, but offered her a reassuring smile. "It's all right. You must have been through something terrible. Don't worry. You're safe now." He helped her to her feet, and Ariel was both amazed and unsteady as she stood on legs for the first time. Her balance wavered, but Eric caught her arm to steady her. "Take it slow," he said, his tone patient. "I'll help you." Eric led Ariel to his castle, which loomed majestically on the cliffs overlooking the sea. Ariel's breath caught at the sight of the sprawling gardens, tall towers, and intricate stonework. Everything was more incredible than she had imagined. Yet, as excited as she was, she couldn't shake the weight of Ursula's spell. She had 3 days to make Eric fall in love with her, and without her voice, it seemed an impossible task. The servants at the castle were equally puzzled by Ariel's silence, but enchanted by her beauty and charm. They assumed she was a shipwreck survivor, and Eric, always kind-hearted, offered her a place to stay until she recovered. Despite her inability to speak, Ariel found ways to communicate. She used gestures and expressions to convey her thoughts, and her natural grace and enthusiasm quickly won over everyone in the castle, including Eric. He was fascinated by her, drawn to the mysterious young woman who seemed so full of wonder and curiosity. One afternoon, Eric took Ariel on a tour of the kingdom. They visited bustling markets, where Ariel marveled at the colorful fabrics, exotic foods, and lively street performers. They strolled along the cliffs, where the sea stretched endlessly before them. Eric couldn't help but notice the way Ariel's eyes lit up at every new sight, as if she were seeing the world for the first time. "You're unlike anyone I've ever met," Eric admitted as they walked through a quiet meadow. "There's something special about you." Ariel's cheeks flushed, and she smiled shyly, wishing desperately that she could tell him how she felt. But the shell necklace around her throat, a cruel reminder of her deal with Ursula, remained silent. As the days passed, Ariel grew more comfortable on land. She danced with Eric in the grand ballroom, walked barefoot along the beach, and even tried her hand at rowing a boat, much to Eric's amusement. Though they couldn't speak to each other, an unspoken bond began to form between them. However, not all was well. Ursula, watching from her lair, grew uneasy. Ariel was succeeding in winning Eric's heart without her voice, and the sea witch knew she had to act fast to maintain control of the situation. On the evening of the second day, Eric sat alone on the castle terrace, gazing out at the sea. Ariel joined him, her presence pulling him out of his thoughts. "There's something I've been struggling with," Eric confessed, looking at her. "I feel drawn to you, but there's someone else. Or at least, I think there is." Ariel's heart sank as Eric continued. "When I was lost at sea, I remember hearing a voice, a beautiful voice that saved me. I've been searching for the girl who sang to me ever since." Ariel's eyes widened. He remembered her song, the very one she could no longer sing. She reached out, touching his hand and silently willing him to see the truth. Eric smiled, though his expression remained conflicted. "You're amazing, and I feel like I've known you forever, but that voice, it's like a piece of me is missing." As Eric stood to leave, Ariel felt a pang of desperation. She had one day left to break the spell, and Eric's heart was still torn. That night, as Ariel sat alone in her room, she resolved to find another way to make Eric see her for who she truly was. The silent connection they shared had to mean something. She refused to believe it was all for nothing. Little did she know, Ursula had already set her plan into motion. Disguised as a stunning young woman with Ariel's stolen voice, the sea witch was making her way to the castle to ensure Ariel's dream ended in failure. Chapter 5. The Rival Appears. The morning of the third day dawned with a golden light streaming over the castle. Ariel awoke with a mix of hope and dread, knowing this was her final chance to win Eric's heart. She dressed quickly and hurried to find him, determined to make every moment count. However, as she descended the grand staircase, her heart sank at the sight before her. Eric stood in the main hall, speaking to a beautiful young woman with dark hair and striking features. She was dressed elegantly, her every movement graceful and poised. But what truly made Ariel's heart stop was the voice that came from her lips. It was Ariel's voice. Eric's eyes lit up as he addressed the stranger. "You're the one, the girl who saved me." The woman, who was none other than Ursula in disguise, smiled coyly. "Yes, it was me. I've been searching for you ever since that night." Ariel froze, her mind racing. How could this be happening? She tried to approach Eric, but he was entirely captivated by the woman before him. Her stolen voice worked its magic, weaving a spell of enchantment over him. Flounder and Sebastian, who had secretly followed Ariel to the castle, watched the scene unfold from a nearby window. "This is bad," Flounder whispered. "Really bad." Sebastian's claws trembled with frustration. "That's no ordinary girl, Flounder. That's the Sea Witch. We've got to do something before it's too late." Meanwhile, Eric announced his intentions to the gathered servants. "I've found the woman I've been searching for. We'll be married tomorrow." Ariel's knees nearly buckled at his words. She shook her head, silently pleading with Eric to see through the deception. But he didn't even glance her way. The impostor had him under her spell. As the castle prepared for the wedding, Ariel wandered through the gardens in despair. Her dream was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Without her voice, she couldn't warn Eric about Ursula's true identity. Sebastian and Flounder approached her, their expressions grim. "Ariel, listen to me," Sebastian said urgently. "We can't let this wedding happen. That's Ursula in disguise, and if she marries Eric, you'll lose everything." Ariel's eyes widened with determination. She didn't need words to fight back. She needed action. She gestured for Sebastian and Flounder to follow her as she devised a plan. That night, as the castle bustled with preparations, Ariel and her friends worked in secret. Sebastian gathered the sea creatures who lived near the shore, rallying them to create a distraction. Flounder swam to gather reinforcements from the ocean. Ariel, meanwhile, kept a close watch on Ursula, waiting for the right moment to strike. The next morning, the castle was decorated for the wedding. Guests filled the grand hall, and Eric stood at the altar, his gaze fixed on Ursula. Ariel hid in the shadows, her heart pounding as she waited for Sebastian's signal. As the ceremony began, chaos erupted. Seagulls swooped down, stealing flowers and ribbons. Crabs scuttled across the floor, causing guests to trip and stumble. Dolphins leapt from the fountains, splashing water everywhere. In the commotion, Flounder nudged Ariel forward, urging her to act. Seizing her chance, Ariel lunged for Ursula's necklace, the enchanted shell that held her stolen voice. The two women struggled, Ursula's false guise flickering as the shell glowed. Ariel's determination gave her the strength to rip the necklace from Ursula's neck. The shell shattered, and Ariel's voice returned in a brilliant burst of light. Ursula's disguise melted away, revealing her true, monstrous form. Eric stared in shock as the truth unfolded before him. "Ariel, it was you all along," he whispered, realizing she was the one who had saved him. Ursula let out an enraged roar, her tentacles writhing as she prepared to retaliate. "You little fool! You think you've won? This isn't over." But Ariel stood her ground, her voice clear and unwavering. "You won't take this from me, Ursula. Not now. Not ever." Before Ursula could strike, King Triton appeared, his trident glowing with power. "That's enough, Ursula," he commanded, his voice echoing with authority. "You've meddled in my daughter's life for the last time." Ursula snarled, but knew she was outmatched. With one final glare at Ariel and Triton, she disappeared in a cloud of dark magic, retreating to the depths of the ocean. As the dust settled, Ariel turned to Eric, her heart pounding. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner," she said softly. "I wanted to, but Eric silenced her with a smile. "You don't have to explain. I see everything clearly now. You're the one I've been searching for." For the first time in days, Ariel felt hope bloom in her chest. The spell was broken, and her dream was within reach. Chapter 6. Love's Triumph. The morning sun rose over the castle, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. Ariel stood on the balcony of her room, looking out at the ocean. The events of the previous day still played vividly in her mind. Her voice had been returned, Ursula had been defeated, and Eric had realized the truth. But there was still uncertainty in her heart. What would happen next? As she gazed at the waves crashing against the shore, a soft knock came at the door. Ariel turned to see Eric standing there, his expression warm and gentle. "Good morning," he said. "I thought I might find you here." Ariel smiled, her heart fluttering. "Good morning, Eric." He stepped closer, his gaze earnest. "I wanted to talk to you, Ariel, about everything." She nodded, giving him her full attention. Eric hesitated, then began, "When I first heard your voice, I felt like it was calling to me, like it was destiny. But when I met you, even without your voice, I realized there was something more. It wasn't just the voice I was drawn to. It was you, your kindness, your courage, the way you see the world with such wonder." Ariel felt tears well up in her eyes. "Eric, I've dreamed of being part of your world for so long. I've always felt like I didn't belong where I was. But being with you, it feels like I've finally found where I'm meant to be." Eric smiled, taking her hands in his. "And I feel the same way. You've shown me a new way to look at life, Ariel. I don't want to lose you." Before Ariel could respond, a commotion arose from the courtyard below. The two of them rushed to the balcony to see King Triton arriving in a chariot of golden light, flanked by dolphins and merfolk. The Sea King looked up at Ariel, his expression a mixture of pride and sadness. "Ariel," he called, his voice deep and commanding, yet filled with tenderness. "May I speak with you?" Ariel glanced at Eric, who nodded encouragingly, and then descended to the courtyard. She approached her father, unsure of what he would say. "I owe you an apology," Triton began, his tone softer than Ariel had ever heard. "I was wrong to dismiss your dreams. I see now how much this world means to you, and how much you mean to him." He nodded toward Eric, who watched from the balcony. Ariel's eyes widened in surprise. "Father, does that mean—" Triton smiled sadly. "It means I love you enough to let you go. If this is the life you choose, I won't stand in your way." Tears streamed down Ariel's cheeks as she embraced her father. "Thank you, Father. That means everything to me." Triton stepped back and raised his trident. "But if you are to live in this world, you must do so fully." With a wave of the trident, a golden light surrounded Ariel. Her mermaid tail transformed into human legs once more, but this time there was no pain, only a sense of completion. When the light faded, Ariel stood before her father as a human, her eyes shining with gratitude. Eric rushed to her side, taking her hand. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said, bowing to Triton. Triton nodded, his voice firm but kind. "Take care of her, Eric. She's my daughter, and she's precious to me." "I will," Eric promised. The ceremony that followed was nothing short of magical. The entire kingdom gathered to witness the union of the prince and the young woman who had captured his heart. Merfolk and humans alike came together, bridging the gap between their worlds in a way no one had thought possible. As Ariel walked down the aisle, her heart swelled with joy. She wore a gown of shimmering silver, reminiscent of the ocean's waves, and a tiara adorned with pearls and sea crystals. Eric stood at the altar, his eyes locked on hers, a smile of pure happiness on his face. When they exchanged their vows, Ariel's voice was clear and steady, filled with love and promise. "I may have dreamed of your world," she said, "but it's you who made it come alive for me. I will love you for all my days, Eric." "And I will love you, Ariel," Eric replied. "You are my heart, my world, and my everything." As they kissed, the crowd erupted into cheers. Fireworks lit up the sky, and the sea creatures joined in the celebration with joyful splashes and songs. From the cliffs above, Triton watched the scene with a bittersweet smile. "She's happy," he said to Sebastian, who stood beside him. "That she is, Your Majesty," Sebastian replied, wiping a tear from his eye. "And that's all that matters." As the festivities continued late into the night, Ariel and Eric danced beneath the stars. The barriers between their worlds had been broken, and together they were ready to build a future full of love, adventure, and endless possibilities.